Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Kayla Lortz here with
John Brownstone.
of LovingBDSM.net. You're getting a new intro to your recorded podcast / video thing we do.
Yes.
We're going to talk directly to you.
How about that?
I know. So this week's episode is about what happens when you try to use DS to fix an already broken relationship, even when you don't necessarily realize the relationship is broken. That's what we're going to talk about. Before we get into it, just want to remind you that if you like this, if you find this helpful, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. Are you having problems over there?
I'm having chair issues, yes.
Well, I'm stealing part of your arm.
Yes, you are.
So subscribe, hit the notification bell, and then you will get notification every time a new video shows up. If you are on other forms of social, you can follow us on Twitter at LovingBDSM. We spend more of our time there than anywhere else.
Yeah.
We are on Instagram, handle I hate. I'll put it down below. Don't worry. We are on FetLife if you're on FetLife, and you can follow or friend us there. So let's get into this week's episode.
Okay.
This topic is one that I tend to yell into an empty room at least once a week. Depends on how many emails or messages come through from struggling kinksters of both sides of the slash, dom or sub, who, you know, list out all the things they're trying to do for their relationship. They're talking about how they've transitioned from vanilla to kink. It's not going the way they thought it would. Here are the issues. And I always start with the same thing. Have you talked to your partner about this? These might be the conversations you should have. Try this, right? Whatever seems appropriate for the conversation. And in more cases than is probably healthy, I guess. The reason I feel like we need to talk about it this week is what I come to find out in further conversations is that there were fundamental problems in the relationship before the switch to DS. Yeah. And DS hasn't fixed any of it. Yeah. And DS probably isn't gonna
exasperate it.
Right. And yes, and in some cases, DS will actually make some of those problems worse.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. In some cases, what I really hope is that we help people before they make that decision and then things go even worse. But if nothing else, if we help anybody out there who's in this situation, you recognize yourself in some of this, making important decisions in life can sometimes be scary. We are not telling anybody what they need to do with their relationships. I'm not the type that says, get out. You know, very rarely. Well, if it sounds like abuse, I'm like, get out as long as you're safe here. How can I help? Right. But that we don't advocate for everybody breaking up with everybody. And, you know, but you do have to do what's right for you. And that often means getting very real with yourself about what's happening or not happening and what's working or not working. So before we upset every single person out there who is now thinking to themselves, wait, DS saved my marriage. DS saved our relationship. DS saved me. Okay. On some level, if your relationship was mostly okay, you both really wanted it to work and you were doing okay, not perfect. No relationship's perfect anyway, but you were floundering. There were some problems and DS enhanced things. Finding your dominant or submissive self helped you understand yourself better.
Right.
If DS improved things, then yeah, it happens. Right. I'm a much better human being now that I know that I'm submissive than before I knew I was submissive. But DS didn't fix me. It was not, there was no magic wand.
I didn't know you were broken.
Well, I probably was a little broken. I was very sexually repressed. I was very much this person who I didn't even know there was a term for it, but apparently I had orgasm anxiety, a form of it. It's not like, I guess, your typical sort of anxiety that we go to a therapist for, although I'm sure you could go to a therapist for something like this, but it was very much that fear of feeling things and letting go. And so I had all kinds of issues. And for me, finding out I was submissive was, I was not that person who was fearful of it. I was like, oh God, thank you. I make so much more sense now. Yeah, I'm submissive. This works. But it wasn't an automatic fix to every relationship I had either. And I think that for some people, there's that tendency. You figure something out about yourself You want that for your existing relationship for all kinds of reasons, right? So sometimes we stay in a relationship because we really do love that person and we hope that they will, love us back the way we need to be and make the relationship work.
Right.
Sometimes we're terrified. We think this is all we're ever going to have, and we don't think we can do anything else, and we think we have no choices, or the choices we have are just too hard to make, and we're not sure we could live with them, and we don't know what the consequences will be, and so we're trying to make the best of a bad situation. And sometimes we don't even know that. We just know things aren't right. And here we found this thing about ourselves, and maybe that'll fix everything. And unfortunately, more often than not, if you're looking for something that will fix a relationship, DS probably won't be it.
No.
Yes, there are exceptions. Yes, I personally have friends who said, we were a little rocky and then we mutually decided to do DS and to try it, and it felt right and we're great. This is the best and strongest we've ever been. Once I embraced my submission and started learning about it and decided that I wanted dominant partners from here on out, I started having better relationships too.
Right, and the same thing for me.
Right.
Once I embraced my dominant side, and I realized that BDSM was the lifestyle that I wanted, a lot of things became clearer for me. A better understanding of me.
Right, exactly. And I think that if you are on either side of the slash, you've figured out, I think I am this. I'm dominant, I'm sub, I'm switch, whatever. I want to explore that. I think even if the relationship you're in is not meant to last and it's not meant to be part of your DS exploration, that your life can become better, not because of DS, but because you've learned something about yourself you didn't know before. Maybe you're more willing to explore it. You get in touch with who you really are. There's all kinds of paths and ways forward. But the relationship itself requires all the people in it to participate.
Right.
Not at the same skill level. I mean, that's not even just one of you's an experienced kinkster and one of you isn't, but we're talking communication skills, following through with things, some of the issues that people being people just sometimes have, right? I mean, if nobody's ever set expectations for you, what kind of life did you have? But if, you get to just sort of float through life and everything magically happens for you, which it's not magical, by the way, if you're one of these people, other people are working very hard to make sure things happen for you. Or if you have never been, felt the consequences of not following through on things, or you feel the consequences, but you shrug them off, right? Those things, that's something that you have to figure out. And if you aren't willing to figure those things out, then the DS isn't going to fix it, okay? We don't magically confer on ourselves the power of Dom or Sub and then therefore magically confer all of the skills and knowledge that go into that, okay? It doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
No.
It's not a it's not a magic bullet. It still takes a lot of work and effort, time.
And the willingness to work. So
right.
Did the blog post this week on things that DS cannot magically fix. And I wanted to make sure I said magically fix, because I think if both people in your dynamic are willing to work on these things, then DS can be great for you. And you can have a very healthy, thriving DS relationship and overcome some serious odds or problems, right? And, one of them is communication. People aren't born knowing how to communicate, y'all. It's a learned skill,
right.
Okay? But the problem is not in not knowing how to do that. It's not in, I'm a really shitty communicator. That's a problem, but that's a solvable problem, right?
Right.
It's the where DS will not fix anything is when the other person goes, I don't have a problem with communication, but they don't communicate, or or they're really bad communicators, or they don't care that that's a problem, or they don't care that in this case communication is such an element of DS.
I'm going to use this as an example because this is what we hear mostly about is someone discovers that they're submissive. Okay, things have been a little rocky in their relationship. They've been doing some reading, stumbled across something, and they find out they're submissive. So, they see these things, something clicks, and this is what I've been all this time. And you approach your partner, and you have the talk. I want to do this. That other person has to be 100% on board for that to work. If they're not 100% on board,
you're going to struggle more than you were already
Right.
going to struggle.
Right. And I can't help but think because of, at least for us, and I said this many times before, that to me, DS is the icing on the cake of a relationship. So I really can't help but feel that, if you are in a relationship that's struggling and you want to try DS, that's fine. Sometimes it can help, all right?
If both of you are committed to it.
Both of you are committed to it.
And it's the right fit for you.
Sometimes you need to work on the relationship first. Get past that hurdle.
Right.
Then step into the DS. The DS is going to take... It's not something you just decide one day, light bulb, and
You've been watching too much Despicable Me.
Yes. And, you jump into it. DS has its own hurdles.
Oh, absolutely. On its
Okay.
own.
On
Even
its
if your
own.
relationship is perfectly clicking along,
Right.
and you still have things you have to learn and things you have to overcome and
Exactly.
habits you have to change and expectations you have to adjust.
Right.
I've got an email sitting in my inbox right now that I hope I get to answer before this show goes live about somebody who is struggling with that right now, where they both want it, but they're at two different levels of readiness. So one partner figured themselves out first or had been doing it longer, hadn't read that closely yet, and so they know who they are, and they're trying to explore this with their partner.
Gotcha.
Their partner is new to it, so their partner has a lot of catching up to do, a lot of education to do, a lot of figuring out how they feel about it to do, and that means the process is going to go slower. It's already not a fast process. We came at each other knowing we were both kinky and deciding that he was looking for a sub. We weren't looking at the time, but we understood that any partner we were going to have going forward was going to be the other side of the slash for us.
Right.
We knew that when we met, even when we weren't trying to be in a relationship with each other.
True.
So we were able to bypass some of that because we were both learning still, because you're constantly learning,
Right.
but we weren't overcoming a lot of mindset stuff. And we still had hurdles, okay? Because in any relationship, there are hurdles.
Yes.
And, we were at our local munch the other day, and we were talking about, we kind of did a roundtable discussion on BDSM 101 and Lifestyle 101 and some of the basics that, sometimes we think people need to...
We had some new people that
Right,
were
and so we were just talking about that, and that was fine, and that's not what this is about. But what struck me, and this is where it relates back to this, what struck me were the amount of long-term lifestyle people. They've been into kink for, some of them longer than I've been alive, okay? And they were talking about how vanilla is different, vanilla is different, vanilla is different. Here's the thing. What makes a healthy relationship, I don't care if you're DS, vanilla, or what, okay, are the exact same components. You have to have communication. You have to have trust. You have to be willing to work through the hard times.
Right.
All of those things have to be there in order to have a healthy relationship.
Respect has to be there.
Respect, right. The willingness to try. You don't have to be good at everything. You have to be willing to try. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to work through these things. You have to be willing to have hard conversations. And here is the bottom line fact on this. If you have all of those problems in your vanilla relationship, switch into DS and go and fix that.
Yeah.
Okay? If you are both committed to doing it, you're still going to have hurdles and you're still going to have to work hard. You're going to have to work harder though, because now you're having to unlearn a lot of bad habits.
Right.
But the bottom line is, good relationships, I don't care what your flavor is, all have the same things in common. So I have, early days of my own submission and my own DS experience, I would say, vanilla, right? Because I was kinky and I was happy and yay. And it's through a lot of thinking and talking to people and seeing how other people are and just seeing healthy relationships in general, that DS does not make that relationship healthy automatically. And in some cases, let's be very clear, it can make it extremely unhealthy. If the power balance isn't right, if one of you does not care about consent, if one of you refuses to communicate and thinks that because you've given yourself the title of dominant, you can do whatever you want to do. Like, all of these things go into it. So part of me wants us to stop doing that. Vanilla relationships don't get it. No, I think most of us just haven't been taught what a healthy relationship looks like. That's not been modeled for any of us. Most of us don't get to see that as kids. We don't necessarily grow up with that. Even in families that were very loving. My parents loved me a lot, right? They made some really shitty decisions because they loved me so much. One of them was to protect me, quote unquote, from sex. Okay? So I'm not sure how great that was for me. A lot of things we do out of love, right? That are just, we learn later, that was not the right decision. So even in some of the healthiest relationships, we have not seen this modeled. So I think some people buy into this is not working because it's a vanilla relationship, and what I need is a kinky relationship, and everything will immediately be better. And that's not true.
Even a vanilla relationship can benefit from the core, the base of what we do.
Well, that's because the base is just the basis of a healthy relationship.
Right.
Talk through everything, get consent. Consent is not a kink thing, y'all. No. Consent is a people thing. I mean, we look around the news, we still have national conversations on lack of consent every day, right? Mm-hmm. So these basics that some people in the kink community kind of go, oh, these are kinky principles. They are principles of the kinky community, but what they should be are principles of the human race. Okay? Yes. They should be principles of everybody. That you do have to talk to each other, and you do have to listen to each other. And establishing trust means something. Being respectful means something. That you don't always have to agree in order to figure out a path forward. Mm-hmm. You know, gaining consent is the ultimate. And not just like, they didn't say no, but enthusiastic, informed consent, where both parties know what the fuck is going on. Right. That is the basis of every single relationship, if it's going to be healthy. And when it's missing some of that, it's not going to be healthy. Right. Now, we're not even talking about people who are incompatible, because sometimes people are just incompatible. I mean, we're talking about the really seriously unhealthy relationships. DS ain't going to fix that either. Mm-hmm. And if you're just not right for each other, personalities don't mesh, you just genuinely kind of go, I don't really like that person over there. Right? I may or may not have been married to somebody like that. You know, those things can go hand in hand with an unhealthy relationship and things aren't working right. But DS isn't necessarily going to fix that either. Okay. We already have these conversations, right? Just because I'm submissive does not mean I'm submissive to everybody. Well, you could actually both be, you know, one of you could be dom and one of you could be sub. Still doesn't mean you're right for each other. Just because the titles go together, it doesn't mean anything. And even then, we have seen relationships where they were not compatible on some levels, but they cared about each other enough that they maintained a relationship, but then changed it to work for them. They had different partners. They played in different ways. Like, they did they invented their whole own thing, which is actually what we're all kind of supposed to do. We are not all supposed to be cookie cutter relationships, vanilla or kinky. They're not all alike.
We're all unique individuals with different needs and wants. Right. So, you know, there's no way it's going to be a cookie cutter.
So if you are currently in a relationship and you're like, yes, I'm kinky, either you've known this for a long time or you're just figuring it out, right? Okay. Keep learning about kink. Keep learning about who you are in respect to all of that, because there's so much and everything's on a spectrum. Mm-hmm. But before you go making a massive switch with a partner, it's time to get real with yourself and about your relationship. And you don't have to talk to anybody else about this, just an internal conversation with yourself. And the questions to ask yourself are, do either of us have communication issues, right? Like, what happens when it's time to have a hard conversation? Does one of us run? Does one of us deflect? Does one of us do things that exhibit really, really bad behaviors? Are you pushing me off your armrest again?
Yes.
Pushing me off the armrest again. Then ask yourself, and you have to be real with yourself about both of you. It is, we've had this conversation in past episodes. It's very easy to decide what somebody else is doing wrong, and it is very hard to see it in ourselves. In your own right. But I'm telling you, you need to look at it for yourself too. Then think about trust. think about, either of you, have you done things, I don't care how well you justify them to yourselves, but have you done things that break the trust? Have you lied? Why do you lie? Lying in itself, just because you lied, is not always the worst thing you've ever done. But for me, it's get to the intentions. Are you hiding something because you don't want to start an argument? Are you hiding something because you have to keep yourself safe? That's totally a thing. Mm-hmm. I'm not judging you for that. But if your relationship is built on lies, are you prepared to come completely clean about them so you can start DS on a healthy, right, in a healthy place?
I've used this term before in past episodes, and I think right now it's very apropos. Before you build your house of kink, you have to have that solid foundation,
right,
to build on.
Right.
Okay. You have to have a solid foundation to move forward, because if you don't move forward in a healthy way, there is so much to learn. There is so much to soak in about all this, and as many years as I've been in the lifestyle, I'm still learning things.
Right.
Okay, it never stops. It doesn't end. You're constantly learning, growing in new ways, and you have to have that solid foundation, because if you don't, it's going to crumble.
And so the thing is, you're asking yourself these questions and you're realizing the relationship is probably not in the best place. Mm-hmm. Okay, now the question is, are you willing to work on that before you go kink? Are you willing? Is your partner willing?
Yeah.
You might be perfectly willing. You might be like, I really want this to last. I still love this person, or I see something here, or all of the things we think when we're in a situation with a relationship that's not going so well that we want to save. So first, you have to ask, are you willing to put in the hard work? And see, putting in the hard work of a relationship does mean admitting if you have been part of the problem. Mm-hmm. So we're assuming that everybody is safe, physically, mentally, emotionally, but you both are problematic, right? Like in this case, both of you are not communicating well. Both of you are not doing well with trust. Both of you have some bad habits that are not helping, right? Are you willing to admit where you're not doing so well? Are you willing to look at yourself and go, ooh, I've been fucking that up too? And then, so you might be willing. That's great. Good for you. Is your partner willing? Does your partner even recognize there's a problem to be fixed? Mm-hmm. If so, what are they willing to do? How much, are they willing to accept the responsibility for their part in it? Are they willing to work on it? Could you possibly go DS and work on these things at the same time? Potentially.
Yeah.
I would say that in that case, there's going to have to be probably a very high interest in DS for both of you.
Both of you, right.
Because if you are really into it and you know exactly who you are and you have done all the reading and all the listening and all the watching and you've got this shit down, and your partner's like, okay, so can you tell me what BDSM is again? You are at two completely different levels
of the spectrum.
And so you're working on fixing your relationship while your partner is starting from absolute scratch on what this is. So in that case, I would probably say work on the issues and slowly introduce DS and say, here, let's learn about this together. Let's, explore it together, whatever. But when you're both willing, and some people are, okay, not all people are trash, y'all. There are a lot of really good, well-meaning people that want to do what's right. They just don't always know how. They don't, the conversation is hard, it's awkward, it's scary, and they don't always even know where to begin. And so if one of you can start it, sometimes the other one is like, yes, you're totally right. What can we do about this? But if it's not like that, okay, if you're having this internal dialogue and you're like, oh shit, we do not have that good foundation. We are a hot mess over here. Things are not, this is worse than I thought. And you're having that thought of, but DS can just fix it. I want my voice to be in your head right now, because my voice is telling you DS is not going to fix this. Okay. DS does not, you can't just switch over to kink and ta-da, all of these issues you've just confronted yourself with and gotten really honest about, they're not going away. Okay. They're going to get magnified. So now you have to deal with the partner is not interested. The partner does not see a problem. The partner wants to deflect, and all the issues that were are the issues, they're rearing their ugly head in front of you when you're trying to help your relationship find a new path forward, express your sexuality, like all these different things. Some people, I've met you, I've been you. Okay, you're going to tell yourself, if I try really hard and I work really hard at this,
You keep
sorry,
inching backwards.
I don't have armrests on my chair.
I know, but you have all this. You keep pushing me off.
If you go through all of that and that partner is still bad news, is deflecting, is being awful, is treating you like shit, is making... Do not do that thing where you tell yourself that I alone can fix this. If I am the perfect kinkster, if I give them all the information, if I do all of the things, I can make this work. Guess what? No, the fuck you can't. Not because you're not amazing and wonderful and strong and just hella good. You are all of those things.
See, let's look at a relationship and put the DS to the side for a second. In order to have a successful relationship, you know, people will say, well, everybody's got to give 50-50. No. No, not true. Everybody has to give, each partner has to give 100%. Okay? All in, all or nothing. So you have to give that 100%. You step in the DS, and it's going to be the same thing. All right?
Even more so, because now you're...
Even more so, because now you're dealing, you know, with things... You know, you're delving into somebody's emotional well-being.
Right.
If they're a masochist, there's the potential to hurt somebody if you don't know how to use something. All right, you just don't go up and pick up a whip with never having used one and whipping somebody. You know, you can do some serious harm. So it's the same thing. When you step into that DS, that other person has to be in 100% and be willing to walk that path to learn and accept it.
And if they're not doing that before you've gone kinky, please tell me why you think they would do that once you try to add DS. If they are not, look, we said this at the very beginning, everybody will have different skill levels and skill sets. So one of you might be really shitty at communication. That's okay. Is that person who's shitty at communication willing to try? It's the willingness to try that makes most of the difference, okay? You still might not get to the picture in your head of perfection. First of all, none of us do. Okay, I don't care how skilled we are.
Yeah.
There's always something you're like, oh, I thought that would go differently than it has. This is one of those cases too. Okay, but if your partner's not even willing to try, and they're not even willing to try now, after you've had that internal conversation, you've looked really hard, you've brought it up, you've said, hey, our relationship is not where it could be, and I really want to see this grow and succeed, and you know, let's work together. And they're still not willing, and you haven't even added kink yet. Kink's not fixing it. Right. And you can't fix it on your own. Okay. I know that's what a lot of you do. And I know it's not just submissives. I have gotten the emails from dominants who are like, here are all the things I've done. And even though it makes me feel like an awful human being and it's awful for my psyche and it's killing my emotions, I allow, and then they have this laundry list of things they let the submissive who is not actively participating in this relationship do. Why? To try and make them happy, to try and keep the peace, to try and keep the relationship going when the relationship itself is broken. Okay. So it is not just submissives, although submissives are very much guilty of this. Before I knew I was submissive, I did this in my first marriage. I did everything I could to make everything work. Everything. Because I told myself that it's, quote, bad to give up on a relationship. No, the fuck it's not. That I would be a quitter, that nobody in my family had ever gotten divorced, which that was only true going back like 2 generations. People had totally gotten divorced. We just didn't talk about it, okay? This is also the family that didn't talk about sex, though, so I probably should have known there was something up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, you know, all of the things we think when we recognize we're in a relationship that doesn't fulfill us, doesn't make us happy, doesn't make us feel good, is not where we thought we'd be at this point. And I'm not even talking money or job. We're talking about wherever you thought you would be at whatever age you are. You're looking at the person in your life going, you're the one? No, this is not what I thought life was going to be like, right? And you're not happy about that. Where all of that, none of it means you're a failure. None of it's not worth forcing the relationship under your own willpower and under all of your own speed and strength to work. The other person has to be working with you. And if you're having these hard, honest conversations, or at least attempting to, and you're trying to get professional help, and I absolutely recommend professional help. I am not capable of providing it, y'all. Not even gonna try. And you're doing your absolute best. you can't do it alone. And if they're not willing to walk the path with you, then they don't need to be on the path with you. Okay.
And sometimes there is nothing wrong with getting professional help.
Please do. Please.
It's when it's needed, it's needed. And if that's sometimes what it takes to jumpstart things, so be it.
Right. And sometimes that can help. Sometimes having that neutral third party who can help you work through these things together is what you need, because sometimes you just can't do it on your own, even, if you both really want to.
Right.
But sometimes I think we know we're in a really shitty relationship that's broken, and that we don't even, we're fixing not because we desperately want to fix it for that person, but maybe we're fixing it because of our ego, or because we think people will judge us if we don't stay, or we think our life will somehow be harder, not worse, definitely not worse, but harder if we do something different. And to a person that I have met, and I include myself in this, when we have left broken relationships that got so broken that there came a point where like, I don't even want to fix this. I don't want to go through all this because I've already spent all these years trying to fix this, right? Every person I've ever met, and I include myself in this, did the split, left, and however way that worked, right? I had a very bad dramatic split, but still, we had the split. The first year or two after that was awful. I mean, it was great because I was not dealing with this person who was not on the same path with me and not trying to be in the same relationship with me. But life got really hard, and then life got much better, because it's like a roller coaster dip thing. You have to jump off the cliff and make the hard decision, and only you can make it, and only you can look at your circumstances and say, yes, I'm prepared to do this right now. And everybody I know fell a bit. Like, it was really hard. I was so happy to be, quote, single, going through the divorce process, but single. Yeah. And life still got really fucking hard. There were still days I sat on my couch and cried and thought, maybe I should have stayed married, because I didn't expect it to be this hard. And then there came a point when it started getting better. And it was incremental. It was teeny tiny. There were moments I was like, is this really better? Is this what better feels like? I don't trust this. And then it really did get better. Okay? Yeah. Now, I can't... This doesn't happen in a perfect arc for everybody, but every single person I've met, including some very close friends, who said to me, I can't leave my partner. It would be impossible. They would make it impossible for me. And I went, okay, because it's not my life. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Okay. Yeah. I went, okay, I'm here for you. I'm, the best I can. I'm an ear. If I can be an ear, I'm a shoulder. If I can be a shoulder. And there came a point, because we all get to that, hopefully most of us get to that point. And she went, I can't. I'll take whatever hardship comes my way. Yeah. She left, and every hardship she had feared came her way. Here's the thing, though. She survived every one of them. Mm-hmm. Now, we are not talking about unsafe situations, okay? Right. We are not talking about those. Those are different, and you do have to take different steps, and you do have to take different cautions. We are just talking about shitty relationships here. Mm-hmm. And if my naggy, ranty voice is what you hear in your head...
That's a scary thing.
Well, yes, that is. But to give you the strength to have a hard conversation, or to walk away, or to say, I'm not putting up with this anymore, and if you really want to be in this relationship with me, we're going to find a way to work on it. I am proud to be that fucking voice, okay? Because I needed that. Y'all, I have now been... divorced for 7 years. Yeah, 7 years. Split for 7.5. And I still wished I'd had that voice in my head. And I didn't. Yeah. And it took a very, very long time for me to go, no, wait, not only is it not supposed to be like this, I don't fucking want this anymore. Yeah. So I'm not advocating for everybody to break up with their partner. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's not what I'm advocating for. Ultimately, the whole point of this show, I knew it would be filled with rants, though. I knew I would rant. Of course. The whole point is, if you're staring down sort of the barrel of a really shitty relationship and things aren't going well, and you're flailing around going, what can I do to get this back on track? Yeah. DS is a wonderful thing for those of us who it works for. It can be an amazing addition to your life. It can strengthen relationships in ways that you could not anticipate. It can do it can do wonderful things. It can't just fix a relationship that, if by itself, it cannot fix a relationship. No.
And I just want to make a quick mention too. We touched briefly on getting professional help, counseling, therapy, and I heard some of you out there that, oh, I can't talk to somebody about being kinky. There is a resource. You're going to have to put the link because I can never remember.
It's from the National Coalition of Sexual Freedom.
Thank you.
And
I can never remember that. I have it bookmarked in case somebody emails me and needs it, but I can never remember.
I think it's on our resource page at lovingbdsm.net.
But, you can always look through there, okay? They have a listing of kink-friendly physicians, dentists, lawyers, counselors, so there are options out there.
And that's not even your only option, because some of you live in teeny tiny little rural places and nobody's putting their name on that list, because the way that list is created is these professionals go in and they add themselves. Okay. And I have looked in some areas, and we live in the Tampa Bay area, and I found 3. Right. We have millions of people who live here. I found 3, and 1 took my insurance. And in our case, I needed somebody who could take my insurance. Now, if you have a little bit more money that you can spend or you're willing to spend, and there's nobody around, there are professionals. Professor Sex is one of them. Angel, our good friend. Shout out to Angel. ProfessorSex.com, by the way. There are professionals who get certified to help people with these things, and they are extremely kink friendly. Some of them, I don't know fees. I'm not telling you fees. Some of them work on sliding scales for people who have less resources. Some offer online things in order to make it more affordable for everybody. Like, there are all kinds of options, and part of it is that if you don't know about them, then you think you're all alone. Right. So if the only way you can do it is through insurance, because you've got, it's just how you do things.
And I believe I have seen some counselors now that offer Skype sessions.
Sure. Start if your thing is you need to use your insurance for therapy or for mental health issues or for any of those things. Start with the link we're going to put for the National Coalition of Sexual Freedom. But if you're just looking for a marriage counselor, or you're looking for somebody who you can talk to about these things, just to be a sounding board, sometimes it's not a doc, especially if, like I said, you live in an area you can't find anybody. There are people out there. We probably need to beef up our resources, the section on our resources page for that, because I know there are a lot of good people out there who can help you and can work with you individually and can work with you as a couple, so that you can get past these hurdles that you're in and hopefully, repair the relationship, or realize in a safer way and a healthier way that maybe you're not good for each other, and then you can part amicably. Because wouldn't that be nice for all of us if we could do that.
Now, one more resource I wanted to mention on that note is, like you said, a lot of counselors may not join that, but what there also is in FetLife, there is a group on FetLife for people who are looking for kinky counselors.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So if you live in city XYZ, you could go in there and post, I'm looking for a kink-friendly counselor in city XYZ.
Right.
Okay. And if somebody there has had experience and knows somebody, they can refer.
Right. Exactly. And here's the thing, y'all. I already know some of the stigma around this stuff. Part of it was because it's stigma I had, and part of it's because it's stigma I've been listening to my whole life about how, I can't talk about those things, or those things are private, or what about, in kink terms, what about my privacy? That's why you look for somebody who's kink aware and kink friendly, okay? Exactly. Because they're going to understand it. We were just talking to somebody the other day. They were asking because they're looking for a kink aware therapist, and so I recommend my therapist to anybody who asks. Like, oh yeah, go to him, he's great. Now that I say that because I like him, I respect him, but not everybody is a good fit. Personalities don't always mesh, that kind of stuff. But some people will, they were like, well, maybe I can, maybe I can't. And I said, well, the nice thing about going to this particular person is he is so kink aware. He asks smart questions. He makes sure that if I say something like, oh, my submissive side was blah, 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 his first thing is to make sure my boundaries are in place, because he understands the boundaries, right? And he understands consent, and he understands all that, and he doesn't look at it funny. And this person we were talking to said, yeah, I have to explain BDSM to my therapist every time I go. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And some people are open to it, and once they learn about it, then they're fine. But yeah, you're doing a lot of explaining. But there's nothing wrong with you in this. I'm trying to get on the camera here. Wrong. I'm doing air quotes, y'all, for podcast listeners. There's nothing wrong with you for needing a therapist. There's nothing. We have attached stigma to these things, and I alone and we alone cannot, break these stigmas. But I'll do my part. There is not. It's just like you'd go to your doctor to get a freaking antibiotic. Go to another type of doctor to check your fucking head, y'all, okay? Right. A lot of us walk around every day with really bad thoughts in our mind, with knowing something's not right but not sure what we can do about it, wanting to talk to somebody and not knowing who we can. This is how this helps us, okay? Yeah. This is that remedy for that. And the sad thing is, the worst thing is that it is not an option for a lot of people. Because of cost, because of access, because of being able to get there. You might have the insurance, you might even have the money, but if you can't physically get to the person who you're comfortable with, then that's a problem. Now, I've not heard ever about whether these are kink friendly or not, so I can't recommend these for that. But if you're just having, you want to talk to somebody about what's going on in your relationship beyond kink, there are text message services now where you can text and you can talk to a counselor that way. I know of one, I can't think of the name of it, but I know of one that was like $10 a month. That might be something more achievable than anything else. Is it going to directly relate to your kink? Not necessarily, but is it going to get you on the right path where you can get some of these things, out of your head and talk to somebody else and maybe work through some things, especially if you're like, oh, we want to switch over to DS and maybe I'm the problem. Well, how do I work on these things? Sometimes it's talking to somebody. Sometimes it's getting help. Sometimes it's finding out why you react so badly to a certain thing or in a certain situation. That's working on yourself so that you can be better for the things you want, and maybe you can be better for the person you love. There's no shame in that either. But we'll wrap it back around to the original point.
Yes.
DS won't fix all of that. DS, you can't just put the DS Band-Aid on the failing, broken relationship, or the bits and pieces of you where things aren't right and you and or your partner could really use some help. DS doesn't just fix that. DS doesn't just make bad habits go away. DS doesn't just make bad acts go away. It doesn't change trust issues. It doesn't change communication issues. It doesn't change any of that. And it doesn't automatically make everything better, because DS is amazing and wonderful and life-affirming as it has been for both of us.
Absolutely.
It's also work. Yeah. It's no more or less work than any other relationship, but it is absolutely work.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, if the foundation of the relationship isn't working, and then you add this thing on top of it that is also work, you've made it even harder for yourself. Right. And now maybe it's demoralizing. Maybe you feel even worse, and things are getting worse. They're not even staying the same. They're certainly not getting better. They're getting worse. So if you're in that situation, just do that self-check thing and really get real with yourself. Now, the other thing I did want to mention briefly. Okay. Because, man, the whole 45 minutes of this has been heavy.
Yes. Well, it's a very intense subject.
So the other thing I did want to mention, I put it in my notes, is that sometimes we've had those conversations. We're like, okay, we know we got to work on it. And we make a switch to DS, and then it all still falls apart. The other thing I want to say is make sure you're not switching to the idealized, eroticized, airbrushed version of DS.
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good
There
point.
is a tendency for newer kinksters, but I think even established kinksters fall into this sometimes, of hearing how somebody else does it and feeling like, I relate to that. So that's the kind of DS relationship I want. And you use somebody else's experience as kind of a guide. Oh, well, they did this, so we should do this. And the problem is it doesn't fit, right? you're trying to put somebody else's jacket on or something, right? And it's just not quite right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't smell right. It's just not right. Well, it's because you're trying to do somebody else's DS. This only works when you do your own thing.
Right.
When you find what works for you, and you will not get it. You won't necessarily get it right from the very beginning. Or you'll get it right in the sense that, I like this. This feels good. Yeah, I like this. And then you'll grow and you'll change. And it won't feel right anymore. It won't fit right anymore. And then you have to be willing, both of you together, to work on it and to shift. But if you are trying to have, so it's a two-sided problem. Maybe you're using DS to fix a relationship, and then you're using the stereotype of DS to fix the relationship. So DS could enhance what you've got. It could make everything better. It could do exactly like we said at the top for the people that we know.
Right.
But you're putting on DS that doesn't fit you. You're putting on roles that don't work. Your expectations aren't realistic for where each of you are
Because it's
at.
not cut from the same cloth.
Right. And so if you're in that situation, you're
Or
like,
leather in this case.
or latex,
Yes.
or denim. Okay.
Okay. All right.
If you are trying this and everything else is good, the relationship was mostly stable, you're willing to work on the things where you're lacking a little bit, everything's good. But you're like, DS isn't fixing it. DS isn't fixing it. Is it DS that's the problem? Or is it the flavor of DS you're trying to do? Is it the wrong flavor? Is it a bad fit? Is it not right for you? That's where then the new part of the hard work of DS starts, because now you have to find it. Now you have to find what feels right. And you have to be, sometimes you have to be brave enough to say, this is the thing that turns me on. And hopefully you have a partner who, even if they don't get it, even if they're like, oh, your kink is not my kink, but your kink is okay, they're willing to listen to you, and they're willing to maybe learn about it a little bit before they say no, or they're, whatever it is. So if you've gone through the whole process and you're like, no, but everything was fine, but DS still didn't fix anything, DS wasn't the right, still doesn't feel right, it still feels like there's problems, make sure that you found the dynamic that actually works for you, and that you're not just mimicking somebody else you found. You're not just mimicking some fiction or some porn or some anything. You're doing your thing, and it might not look like anybody else's DS, and that's okay. And it shouldn't. But because I'm one of these people, if it doesn't look like the diagram in the book, I'm like, did I miss a step? Am I doing it wrong? No. This is absolutely individualized. It's unique to every individual and then every relationship. And there's no right answer. We've said this a million times. The only things that we say are requirements in DS are consent and communication. You got both of those things, you can have DS, and you can have any kind of DS you want. And it doesn't have to look like anybody else's DS. It only has to fulfill you and your partner. Exactly. And if it does that, then you're golden. And you've done what you're supposed to do, and have a good time. But also don't get stuck, because you'll tell, things will start feeling weird, and it's not quite as good as it was once. And okay, it's time to have another conversation.
Yep.
And hope you have a good, strong foundation so that you can have that conversation. Okay.
All right.
So I didn't end too heavy. Does that count?
Yeah.
That counts, right? That totally counts.
Okay.
That totally counts. Okay. So yeah, I know this dredges up a lot of thoughts and feelings for people.
I'm sure it does.
I worry for anybody who heard themselves in my lecturing and is now like kind of in an unsettled place. We will link to resources if you know this problem is just not something that you're going to be able to solve having a coffee with your partner and feel like just having a conversation. If you have thoughts or feelings about any of this, as always, you are welcome to talk to us. Talk to us on Twitter. Talk to us in the comment section. Talk to us on FetLife. We'll talk to anybody about this. You don't even have to agree with us. You just can't be an asshole. That's
Say it with respect.
Right. You can fundamentally disagree with everything I stand for. Well, maybe not everything, but most things. As long as you're polite about it, I might go, yeah, that person's wrong. But it doesn't devolve into drama and whatever. So, yeah, that's it. And I guess we'll have to finish up here and then go into our bonus section.
Yeah.
Because OMG.
Are we good?
As good as I think we're capable of being. Oh, that's not. I don't know if that's
you're delving into
that's not the
touchy territory there,
I know.
girl.
Oh no, we're fine. We're fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right. You ready?
Vaguely.
All right.
Keep it kinky, y'all. And we'll see you next week. Daddy.
Yes, baby girl.
Can I talk to the crickets?
Well, I guess if the crickets are still here.
I know, if I didn't scare them all. I hear. Go ahead. We've been really bad at this lately, interrupting each other.
Yes.
I know. No, the crickets tell me every week that they love my rants, and yet I still worry that my rants are scaring people away.
Your rants scare me sometimes.
Well, I might be okay with that.
Oh,
You're
really?
kind of stuck with me. I mean, you could divorce me, but we know neither of us is going to do that shit again. We'll just be angry people who live at opposite ends of a house. We're just not going through it again. No, I'd like to think that all of our cricket friends would stage a massive intervention if you and I hit the rocks or something. So let's start with mail.
Yes, we've got mail.
Oh, and I would like to, since Misha, our good friend Misha, was shocked to hear that I was drinking tea in the last episode, I would like to say that I'm absolutely drinking coffee for this one, and I am drinking out of my cup that says Queen of Spunk and Sass. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, I'm a sex person, so spunk means something to me that it didn't used to mean to me. And this cup is still perfect, quite frankly. It just is. Okay, but it's filled with coffee. I'm very happy about that. Okay. So we got amazing mail this week.
Yes, we did.
So I'm not going to... one of our wonderful listeners and crickets and friends from Australia ended up sending us 2 pieces of mail. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do that one second because it's 2 and it's the same person. But this first piece of mail, you have to be the one to... Oh, I did it. I got it in camera.
You're getting better.
I am getting better. I still suck at it. There is a picture on Instagram if you're a podcast listener, but if you are watching on YouTube, then you saw me barely get it in camera shot. It's actually card 1 of 2. We have not gotten the second one yet. I hope that's because it just hasn't been sent yet, because we've had this card for over a week, and if we haven't gotten the second one yet, that means it might be lost. But it's greetings from Stockholm. They were meeting halfway in a long distance relationship.
Cool.
I know. And I don't know if they're their FET names or their Twitter names, but it's Killikaz. You think I said that right?
I think so.
Okay. And Verticordia? Where? If I fucked those up, please let me know. But it is a beautiful, beautiful, looks like a painted scene.
Here, let me see.
You look at it. You're better at that than I am. It's a beautiful postcard. It's one of those long...
panoramic shots.
Thank you. I couldn't see them. No, y'all not
I know
good at
words
this.
sometimes. Folks.
You know words. No.
Skyline over
Stockholm.
Twilight
Time.
Twilight Time.
He did say greetings from Stockholm, so one would assume the picture was from Stockholm.
Sure.
So that was awesome, and thank you. And I hope that your time meeting halfway as LDR is a long, long time, so you can soak it all in
and
before.
It's been fun.
Exactly. And if you had so much fun, you forgot to send the second postcard. We're totally
Even
okay
better,
with that.
We're good with that.
Exactly.
Enjoy.
So our next bit of mail comes from Mel in Australia, who is wonderful. Mel has sent us many, many pieces of mail.
Yes.
This one, I'm going to try and get it in
the
scene. Yes, you do it.
Okay. I want people to be able.
You're doing it worse than I was doing it before.
There we go.
So
there we go.
If you're listening to the podcast, go to YouTube and get to about minute 50 video, and you'll see how poorly John Brownstone put the postcard in front
because
of
I was trying to get it close enough to show
right. But it's now 5 feet away from me. I can't read it. Thank you. Thank God this is the bonus section.
What do you mean you can't read it from there?
So Mel, who has sent us a lot of mail over the past couple of years, listened to some episodes where we didn't have mail and didn't want me to be sad, and so therefore sent us mail. And the postcard is from an art exhibit, National Gallery of Australia. It is trippy.
Yeah.
So it's animals.
There's tentacles.
Well, there are tentacles, yes, but let me explain this, okay? There are animals flying through the sky, but they're like hybrid animals. So there's a dog with octopus tentacles, and there's cats with wings and snakes coming out of their butt. Like it's definitely art. But I love the fact that Mel sent this so that I would have mail and I wouldn't be sad anymore. I like that. Because both those postcards came last week. We recorded earlier than normal and hadn't gotten to the post office, and so there was in between. Well, now we're recording on our normal day, record on Thursday, post it on Friday. And Thursday morning, I checked the mail. And I knew about this because Mel had already emailed me, but I had forgotten about it. And it is a copy of a very first ever inaugural copy of the magazine called, I hope I say this right, Damask. That's how I would say it. And it is an alternative lifestyle magazine. It's a kinky magazine. And I haven't even gotten to read it yet. We're recording it. I brought it home.
I read a couple articles in there already, and I liked it.
One of the articles is B is for bondage. So we're talking about that. Ethics of... here's an article called Shame on Us, How We Approach the Ethics of Heterosexual BDSM Relationships Within a Patriarchal Society. What? So you're like, well, how did Mel send this to you? So Mel, who is wonderful, I keep saying that we love Mel because we love Mel, supported an Australian Kickstarter project, but did it in our name. The Damask.
Yeah.
Right. They went on Kickstarter to get the funding they needed to create this magazine. It's a nice, glossy, very thick paper, filled with kinky images, like really cool magazine. Can't wait to actually sit down and read it. Hopefully by the time this episode goes live, I will have read it. But did it in our name. And so I got the email for the digital copy, like probably a week or so ago, and then forgot all about the physical hard copy. And then it came today. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I probably should email Mel back and let her know we got it. But it is a very, very cool thing. And if, in the email I got a couple weeks ago, I think they're going back through to do more funding to keep the magazine going. So if I can find the link to that, we'll put that out too. So yeah, awesome fucking mail.
Right, yeah.
I know.
Good stuff.
Very good stuff. So now, the thing I teased at the top. The 13-year-old asked the question.
I'll just go ahead.
No, what? Oh, you're going to leave now, huh? You weren't there for the conversation. Now you're going to leave when I talk about the conversation. Okay, so now, y'all, it's been a couple days, and I blocked some of it from my memory, so this will not be a word-for-word retelling. When they're home, I try not to be working as much anymore when they're home. I try to, I'm trying to have balance. I'm trying to, not kill myself with work, whatever. But typically when they get home from school, I'm working. I'm sitting at my desk in the corner. They like to come give me hugs. I love that about my kids. They want to give me hugs. Great. The 13-year-old has a habit of going, I probably don't want to look at your computer screen, do I? No, you don't. So don't. Well, I was in the Loving BDSM email account, replying to emails. And in our signature, it's like real big, Loving BDSM. And he goes, Mom, what's BDSM? And I don't know that there's a parenting book on the planet that prepares you for that question. I'm pretty sure that there's...
Not that I've heard of.
There's not a fucking manual for that.
I don't think Dr. Spock covered that one.
So I didn't... Look, I'll admit, my first initial reaction in my head was, I'm not talking about that. And then I realized I was being like my mother. So no, we're not doing that. And I said, well, because I'm weighing my words carefully here. Like, what do you say? What do you not say? I said, it's an alternative lifestyle that's sexual and it's about relationships. And normally the moment I say the word sexual, he's out. He's like, I'm out. But he's
done.
like, okay. And that was in no way a complete answer for him. Because he was like, I know that doesn't actually answer this for me. What? That was the look on his face. So I said, well, the letters all stand for something. And I spelled them out. I did not explain what any of the words meant. I just said it's bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, sadism and masochism. And his eyes are getting bigger and bigger. He doesn't really know what any of those words mean. As far as I know, he has not had access to any of that stuff. We've only caught him looking at porn once. And that was not the kind of porn he was looking at. So they kind of didn't mean much, but I think he kind of understood that those are kind of heavy words, and I know what they mean in other contexts, and wait, what? And I said, but he's still giving me this look like he knows there's more. And I'm realizing it's not a good explanation. And I said, look, in these types of relationships, sometimes it's about sex and sometimes it's not. I said, but when people are involved, the way it works is there's something called a power exchange. And he's like, okay. I know he was thinking like electrical grid, like what? I said, one person.
Clean power, hydropower.
You know, right? Wind turbines? I said, one person is in charge of the thing the people like to do. Because I'd already spelled out what BDSM stands for. I said, and the other person gives up control. And they do, on some level, what the other person wants. And here's how I know I'm doing right as a parent. Because I was starting to say, with consent, and he filled in the blank. I said, as long as he goes, consent, right? Consent. I said, yes, and communication. You can't do it if you don't have those two things. And he went, okay. So I got into no technical, like, descriptions of how you do the thing. No, avoided that. He's 13. He didn't seem interested, and I wasn't going to push that. I explained to him that there are different ways to do it. If you are into BDSM, you don't have to be into all the different ways. You can be into it in a bunch of different ways. I said that I talked about consent. I said the other thing you have to understand is that people who don't understand it or are kind of freaked out by it or who don't approve of it or like it, they will sometimes think that it's abusive and they'll call it that. And people who do things like this can still face consequences if it's caught. You know, people have lost their jobs and people lose their custody of their kids.